All right, welcome back, everyone. We are diving into chapter 6 of our First Principles Thinking course. And today, we're tackling a huge topic, one that literally drives the modern world, innovation. So, here's our game plan. First, we're going to build what I call the Innovator's Toolkit. Then, we'll see this toolkit in action, how it completely revolutionizes products and tech, reshapes business strategies, and, even helps us build a more sustainable future. And of course, at the end, we'll talk about your next steps. Sound good? Let's jump in.
Okay, first up, the Innovator's Toolkit. Look, before you can build anything new, you need the right tools, right? And the most powerful tool isn't a piece of software or some fancy machine, it's a way of thinking. And at the very core of this toolkit is the idea of first principles.
So what exactly is first principles thinking? Well, think of it like this. It's a mental model for just taking a problem apart. You break it down, piece by piece, until you're left with only the most basic, fundamental truths, the stuff you know for sure is true. And from that foundation, you rebuild. You build a new understanding from the ground up, totally free from all the old baggage and assumptions everyone else is carrying around. I love this analogy. It's like wiping the chessboard clean, so you can see the game with totally fresh eyes. All right, so we've got the tool. Now let's actually put it to work. In this next section, we're diving into the world of products and technology. We're going to see how this way of thinking applies to real physical things. Stuff you can actually hold in your hands. So let's think about the car industry. For more than a century, it was basically built on one single assumption: just make the gasoline engine a little bit better. Year after year, it was just a little more efficient, maybe a tiny bit more powerful. It was this endless cycle of small, tiny, incremental tweaks to the exact same core idea. But here's the thing. An innovator using first principles, they don't ask, how do I make this engine better? No way. They ask a completely different, much deeper question. They ask, what is the absolute best, most efficient, and sustainable way to power a vehicle? You see the shift there? It's huge. It's not about just improving the old answer. It's about throwing out the old question and finding a totally new solution. And that right there is the fundamental difference. On one hand, you've got the old way, just tweak the engine. But on the other hand, the first principles approach forces you. It demands that you reevaluate the whole shebang: energy sources, propulsion, battery tech, efficiency, all of it, right from square one, from absolute zero. And of course, this is exactly what a company like Tesla did. They started with the most basic need, transportation. Not how do we build a better gasoline car, but what's a better way to get from point A to point B. They took on all those old assumptions head on. That batteries are too expensive, that people would never wait for a car to charge. By questioning those so-called facts, they blew the doors wide open to reimagining the entire concept. The result wasn't just another car company, it was a whole new category of vehicle. Okay, let's bring this down to earth a bit. Think about something you probably have in a kitchen drawer. For decades, if you wanted to design, say, a new vegetable peeler, the standard approach was just to copy whatever was already selling well. You'd look at the most popular one, and your only thought was, okay, how can I make mine look kind of like that, but maybe a little different? But again, that's not the first principles way. The innovator asks a totally different question. Instead of looking at the product, they ask, what does a person actually need when they're using this tool? What's the experience like? Suddenly, the whole focus shifts from the object itself to the human who's using it. And that's where a company like OXO comes in. Their entire philosophy is built on these first principles. It's all about user-centric thinking, making things comfortable, easy to use, versatile. They would create prototype after prototype, constantly testing them. But they weren't testing against the latest design trends. They were testing against fundamental things like, is this easy to use for everyone? And is it going to last? It's all about how it feels and how it works, not just how it looks on the shelf. So, as you can see, this way of thinking is powerful for physical products. But it doesn't stop there, not even close. Now, we're going to scale up and see how these same principles can completely reshape entire business strategies and really complex systems. Just think about some of the biggest industries out there and their old, baked-in assumptions. For example, if you want to be in the hotel business, you have to own hotels. Simple, right? If you want to be in the taxi business, you have to own a giant fleet of cars. The core assumption was that to be in the business, you had to own the expensive assets. So what's the first principles question you'd ask? It's this: what are the truly essential parts of hospitality or transportation?
And what companies like Airbnb and Uber figured out was that the answer had nothing to do with ownership. The fundamental core components are actually access and convenience. That's the real product.
And this reveals a kind of roadmap for reinventing any business. You start by taking apart how the industry creates value. Then you look at how they reach customers, how they build relationships. You break it all down into its basic pieces. And only then can you rebuild something new, something based on what customers actually fundamentally need. It's really a blueprint for disruption.
Honestly, this is the classic startup playbook. This is how disruptors win. Instead of just trying to copy the big, established companies, they use first principles to find the real cracks in the armor. They dig deep to understand what people really want, not just what they've been trained to accept. And that's how they carve out a totally unique market position and just walk away from all those outdated industry habits that, let's be honest, don't really serve the customer anymore.
Okay, for our last big example, let's apply this thinking to one of the biggest challenges facing all of us. We're going to talk about building a sustainable future and how first principles can help us completely rethink our relationship with the planet. For pretty much all of modern history, our global economy has run on a super simple but really destructive model. We call it take, make, dispose. We pull resources out of the ground, we make stuff with them, we use it for a little while, and then we throw it away. It's a one-way street that ends in a landfill. So that leads us to a massive first principles question. What if we didn't have to have that one-way street to the landfill? How could we design systems that eliminate waste completely and get the absolute maximum value out of every resource? I mean, just asking that question challenges the very foundation of how our economy has worked for centuries. And the answer that's emerging is something called the circular economy. This whole approach is born from first principles thinking. It's all about redesigning products so they last longer, so they're more durable. It's about focusing on making things fully recyclable, minimizing our environmental impact, and just being smarter with our resources. The goal here isn't just to do less bad, it's to create a system that is fundamentally, from the ground up, good for everyone. So, let's wrap this up. Where do we go from here? We've seen how this one powerful way of thinking, this Innovator's Toolkit, can literally reshape everything from a vegetable peeler to the global economy. The next step, and the most important one, is for you to start making this tool your own. And look, your journey with this skill is just getting started. The best way to really master it is to see it in action over and over again. So I highly recommend you continue on to Chapter 7, where we're going to break down even more fantastic real-world examples. And to help all this sink in, don't forget to check out the quizzes, notes, and a really cool infographic for this course. You can find all of that at theventure.com and in the link below. Seriously, it's a great resource, especially for courses on tech and business. So, I'm going to leave you with a challenge. A question to take with you. Look around at your own work, your industry, maybe even just a simple daily habit, and ask yourself, what is that one big, long-held assumption that everyone just accepts that's just sitting there, waiting for someone like you to finally challenge it?